Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Switch Statement Podcast. It's a podcast for investigations into miscellaneous tech topics.
This is episode 15 in our series on the art of game design by Jesse Schell.
Hey, John, how are you doing?
Hey, Matt. I'm doing very well. How are you doing?
Doing okay.
It's a lovely Saturday morning. Not our normal recording time, but...
Not our normal recording time, but,
seems like
hopefully our listeners won't hold that against us.
Yeah, they have no idea. They don't know. We could be recording this
50 years ago. They have no idea.
Yeah. Anyhow, we have 3 chapters we're going through today, all about working with a team. How did you feel about these?
I thought there was a lot in these sections about that could apply to any engineering team.
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
Did you find yourself getting an anxiety during these chapters because they were just so similar to your everyday life?
Oh my gosh, that part about docs,
yes.
Yeah, we'll get into this. There was a whole chapter about documents, but
that material was very triggering for me.
He acknowledged something that I feel like most engineers just they refuse to acknowledge, which was actually really refreshing. Where he's like, the minute you write this doc, it's out of date.
Yes,
and it's like there's so much culture in Google around having good design docs, and at least when I was there. It was I felt like it was kind of the assumption that the doc is the source of truth and it should be the be all end all of organizing a project. And
yeah. And how many times did you ask someone, oh, hey, how does this API work? And they're like, check out this doc. And then you look at the doc and it's just completely out of date. And it basically has misinformation.
3 years ago, has not been touched since. And there have been many significant changes to the way it works.
Yeah. So you wind up reading the code anyway to figure out how it works. Yeah. Happens all the time at Google. Google is very much, in my opinion, as someone who kind of hates design docs, understands that there is a lot of value in design docs for certain contexts. I also hate them because I think Google believes that they're the Bible of how to build software. And I just completely disagree with that point of view. Design docs are a point in time snapshot of that are unclear and don't tell the full story about how some software is going to work. But then once the boots hit the ground, everything changes. And unless you're diligent and going back and updating your design doc, it's going to be completely out of date.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's start at the first chapter, which was just about teams specifically.
Yeah.
And he had this quote, which is, I wrote this note down. He says, "This is the most serious thing I will say in this book. The secret to successful teamwork is love." And,
yeah. I giggled at
and
that
I'm not.
part.
It's funny because I think people might be like, oh, isn't that so dumb? He's talking about love. But actually, the thing that stuck out to me about this quote is he feels like he's double dipping he wants to have a couple of times where he says this is the most important thing. This is the and then he has that in a couple different, he just says in a couple different ways where it's I am a game designer. And he in that chapter, he wants to make this incredibly wide, sweeping claim that there's the one truth, there's the most important thing, and it's all right, here's the latest, most important thing.
Yeah. He's a big fan of the drama and superlative, I've noticed.
Yeah. And that was what I took away from.
What was his point, though? Obviously, there's a lot of. You can use the word love to mean certain things in a team, like mutual respect and all that stuff. Was that what he was getting at? I can't remember. I remember reading that and kind of cringing a little bit, but I don't remember if he had an underlying point that he was making.
Yeah, it's funny because he says love is the most important, or the secret to successful teamwork is love. But then he goes on to describe these like love problems, or I don't know if that's the term that he uses, but like that might be my reading. But he talks about love about the game, and it's so his point was you need to love games. You need to like love what you're building, not necessarily that you need to like love each other. That was kind of my takeaway.
Yeah. You need to do stuff in the interest of the final product because you want that final product to exist.
If you have people on the team that are not doing that, like if they have another end goal, which is like if their highest goal is their own self-advancement and they don't really care about the product at all, which I think that's a really common problem.
Super common. I mean, pretty much, well, I almost said everyone I know, but I mean, so many people in the engineering world, they're just getting a paycheck. Like they're checking boxes all day so that they can get their paycheck, which is fair.
Don't get me wrong. Like in a way, I think sometimes they're more effective because like someone who really loves something, they can get kind of, I think their view can get kind of distorted by their love for the product or what have you. And I think if you're like detached a little bit, it can only almost be useful.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because if a company does a really good job of lining up, checking those boxes with building good stuff, then they can actually use that motivation as their like primary motivation, which I think a company the size of Google, I think they try to do that. They try to like make it so that you are incentivized to just check those boxes for your performance reviews. And in doing so, you are helping the bottom line, like you're helping the underlying product, which I do think it can be tough because I think different people derive motivation from different sources. Some people aren't motivated by money at all. I mean, they might be somewhat motivated by money, but they're more motivated.
It's like once they meet some threshold, it's like the other thing is, I don't know about you, but it's so abstract.
Yeah.
Like my cognitive attachment between my job and money is like zero. Like in a day-to-day basis, it's basically zero. And what I'm driven by is so much more of these like fuzzy, just sense of wanting to do a good job,
Yeah, companies should have it so that everything you do at your job is gamified and you get little like cha-chings every time you like, oh, you submit a line of code. Oh, you get $40 in your bank account. That if they like,
that would be so bad. I'm
yeah, I would just sit there all day 24/7 like, getting not even for the money, just for the like endorphin rush
the
of
sound,
the gamification.
Yeah.
But this is something I've always found interesting because I've gone through long periods of my career where I don't feel motivated at all because I'm like a very intrinsically motivated person. Like I think if there's no underlying value to what I'm doing, I just cannot motivate myself to do it.
Yeah.
And so at a job at a big company, a lot of times what you're doing, it just feels so much like there's no value here. Like I'm just working towards ticking some box that like some VP wants to tick. And it just feels, like I've always struggled to motivate myself in those situations. So something.
Well, this is interesting because I think organizations benefit from the people in the lower ranks having autonomy. Having some measure of autonomy because they need to. The higher ups are then held to a standard where it's like, and I think the clearest way this manifests to me in Google is it's very easy to change teams without your manager's approval.
Yeah.
As long as there's not fundamental problems with your ability to perform, like it was actually crazy how like when I changed teams, like I actually think I caused a little bit of like, it wasn't a stir, but like my manager was like caught off guard when I changed teams.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, this is happening now. So I wish you had come to me earlier just to talk. And I guess like, oh, okay. I guess I didn't think this through, but
no, I had the same exact situation when I left ads. As I remember my manager, who I really like, my manager in ads. He's a great guy. But I remember him being a little blindsided and having this kind of like hurt look, and I just felt really bad.
Oh, well, same thing for me in ads. I mean, it's funny because I think it probably is a problem where very few incoming engineers want to
work in ads.
Work on ads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the type of thing where you need to, well, maybe some people are intrinsically motivated by the concept of advertising, but you need to be, I feel like you need to be one of those people that's just motivated by the paycheck to do that job.
And that's another really hard thing because I don't think Google was really able to pay the people who worked on ads more. Like they had this leveling thing where like in order to preserve some measure of fairness, like we can't pay them more. And it's like, the problem is then you probably have a little bit of a brain drain in ads because it's just a fundamentally uninteresting product.
Yeah, I feel like the only advantage ads has is it's so easy for them to justify their business and justify getting new headcount and opening up new like senior positions and stuff that they probably can pay people more using those mechanisms. But yeah, I mean, to your point, like there's pretty wide banding in the engineering levels in terms of salary, but ads can't like pay all their engineers higher salary than the other engineers. Like they just can't do that.
Yeah. So I did want to talk through one thing that he said. He calls out. There's three like love. Oh yeah, again the love problems that I referenced before. I just want to go through them. So he kind of talked about no love, which is like he's saying like some team members they don't love the idea of making games at all. Like again, it's like ticking boxes. So that and then his point is you got to just get them off the team. Like these are bad, like fundamentally bad people to have on your team,
right?
And you should just like get rid of them.
Which is interesting. I found myself somewhat disagreeing with that. Like I do, I believe in this notion of there are people, and I think this is totally reasonable. There are people in the world who do not care about the agenda of some company, but they're willing to give some of their time away in return for money. And I think that's totally reasonable. Like, you know, the mercenary engineer who just joins a job, makes some money, leaves the job. They don't really care. I think that's a perfectly viable way to approach it.
Do you think games are fundamentally different in this regard?
I hope not. I think engineering projects need engineering expertise, and I would hope that those types of people can join a game project and churn out a few features and work on some stuff and then leave. Like I would hope that concept of loving the game and wanting to produce the best possible product, only some people at the company would need to have that mentality in order to truly produce a good product. But I don't know. I'm not sure. I mean, what I will say is about myself, I am the type of person that I'm almost 100% intrinsically motivated. Like money has never been a big motivator for me. And just some manager coming down and handing me a list of tasks is certainly not a motivator for me. I need to believe that there's value in what I'm doing. Otherwise, I just can't even focus.
Yeah. Yeah. Other things that just feel more valuable are just going to steal focus, essentially.
Exactly. Even if it's like a hobby project I'm working on that's completely outside of my career, like I won't focus on stuff at my job because I'll be thinking too much about some other thing that feels more valuable. So which I've always seen that as a problem with myself. Like, I wish I could just focus on whatever my job wants me to do.
I think it's a short-term problem, though. Like, I think it's actually a benefit in the long run.
I hope so. I tell myself that as well.
But so I just wanted to respond to one point. I think you're right. In principle, someone should be able to do that on a game. You can view a game like any other software engineering problem or project, and then you can have those box checkers. Yeah. Where I think it's different is a supply and demand thing. I think the fact that he's able to get them off the team here is because there's so much supply of people who want to work on games.
Right.
That you can afford to do that. Like, you can, he says, like, I'm going to have access to another really talented person who does love the game because it's intrinsically interesting. So I think that's kind of what I'm reading between the lines there.
I think you're absolutely right that there's so many engineers who came into the business to work on games, and they're willing to sacrifice on other aspects of their professional life, like working hours, salary, and a lot of psychological safety in order to actually be working on games. And we've seen this, crunch times that big companies have, like Rockstar and Blizzard and stuff. I guess people are just willing to put up with that type of work environment.
Yeah. So the second love problem that he calls out is a person who is in love with a different kind of game than the one that you're making.
Yes. This one,
which I thought was interesting.
This one I really liked because this plays into what I believe is the most important part of a team, which is communication, where I've been on teams where each member of the team thinks that we're building a different thing.
Well, this is one thing that's interesting is he actually breaks these down into two different categories.
Yeah.
And differing visions was this third thing, which is even a harder problem to kind of detect. This was kind of a coarser grained thing where it's like, oh, you like FPSs and we're doing a role playing game, like,
right?
Where it's like this coarse category misalignment, I guess.
Yeah, that's all. That's the like engineers want to build different things, which I get. Yeah, I'm definitely referring to a different problem, which is where people might earnestly want to agree on what we're building, but because of bad communication, it's been unclear. Like, people just don't know exactly what's being built, so they're building different things.
Yes. This is the thing. And so to get to love problem 3, two different people have two different visions of the same game, and different people have different visions.
Right.
And it's like, is that because it hasn't been clearly enough specified, or is that because I guess that's it. It's just that there's been ambiguity about what you're trying to build.
I feel like I've never experienced a case where there was just this unreconcilable difference in what people wanted to build. It's always the case where it just hasn't been communicated well, where two people have just developed this different notion of a final product in their head, and there hasn't been enough information to tell that they're different products.
This is the thing that's so surprising to me still, is I can go into a meeting, have a long conversation with another person. I can be of the opinion that there's no ambiguity at all in what we discussed.
Yes.
In what we discussed. And then we just start going in two different directions.
Yes.
And it still catches me off guard, and I'm trying to get better at different possible interpretations and describing. People probably think I'm an idiot or something, because I will re-describe the same thing like multiple times.
Oh, that's such a good thing to do.
Like we, at the end of the meeting, I'm like, all right, this is what's going to happen. This is what we said was going to happen. And I try to like really make sure that I understand everyone is kind of agreeing with the same vision. But
yeah, it's crazy because, I've most of my career has been so much like execution and just something needs to be built. And I'm just a code monkey basically. And I have recently reached a point in my career where it's much more about like understanding a bunch of ideas that the organization has and trying to like mold those ideas together or like merge them or communicate them to other people. And I have realized so many flaws in my own communication style where one of my biggest flaws, which is crazy because, well, I'll explain why it's crazy in a second, but one of my biggest flaws is assuming people have context.
Yeah.
Either, and I don't want to say like it's for basic things, but, for instance, I'll talk about servers. I'll just say like, oh, you have one server that does this and one server that does this. And maybe I'm talking about separate, like a separate individual binaries that are like deployed to the cloud, right? Some other person might think I'm just talking about two services that exist in the same binary. So it's just this kind of like word that is so overloaded at this point that when I'm saying something, someone else is hearing something else. And I've found that, I think like you, I find myself repeating things and even describing things that I hope I'm not like being patronizing, but I'm just describing stuff in hopefully such a simple way that those types of misunderstandings can't happen. But it's really hard. It's a huge adjustment for me because I'm just not used to talking about stuff this way.
It's funny, and that is a really tough area of miscommunication to figure out because it is the agreement on what terms mean.
Right.
Because that's where these silent disagreements come in, where they think they know what you're saying and you think that they're receiving it, and it's actually you had different understandings. So this just happened to me where it's basically exactly what you said about servers. I was talking about APIs.
Yeah.
And like that is API is so like broad, and I was talking about an internal programmatic API, and they thought I meant like surfacing this external API.
Yes.
And so it's just
I have dealt with that exact same word. Like I've actually come to hate the word API because it is used in so many different ways to describe so many different things. I have heard people say API to mean like a binary that's deployed somewhere. And it's just crazy. It's a very overloaded word. I try to avoid using it.
I do want to say server is a binary. Come on.
Well,
it can't be one thing. Like, okay, a server could be either a binary or it could be like a physical machine.
Yeah.
You can't have a server inside of like it can't be one thing inside of
a server.
It
can't be
yeah.
Yeah, you can't even finish the
service.
sentence because it's yeah, exactly. A service is something that could probably exist in a server. There could be multiple services in a server. So I definitely agree with that interpretation of the word. But you mentioned another point of confusion for server, which is like, is it a machine or is it just some job that's running on a machine? Nobody knows. Or it could be a set of jobs that all respond to the same, set of APIs.
Exactly. Oh, and this is what's even more confusing is because I get service comes back again, and it's like it's this larger collection. It's like, oh wait, actually the service refers to a series of jobs that are running the server binary.
It refers to a set of APIs that are exposed by some servers running services. Yeah, it's terrible. I hate words. I find myself hating the English language because it is so imprecise. And coming from a life of just programming all the time where it's literally the most precise thing you can possibly do. Like the computer just does exactly what you say, even if you totally screw up. Like speaking in English words is such a worse job.
Yeah, we should. I don't know. I guess we should just speak in JavaScript or TypeScript or something.
This is an idea that I feel like you've had or you've talked about many times, which is a completely unambiguous spoken language or written language, perhaps. But like, you know, a language that can convey ideas like English can, but there's just no chance of ambiguity.
Lojban.
Lojban
exists.
Yeah. I was trying to think of because I remember you've talked about this before. Which
I didn't remember the name of it, but I did.
Should I be writing my design docs in Lojban?
People would probably understand it better, assuming they understood Lojban.
One thing I was just thinking about, because it's something that's come up a lot recently, is communication bandwidth and different forums where communication happens, and just what, you know, where you can find value. Because, for example, for the longest time, everyone was remote, right, during COVID. Mm-hmm. So everyone got really good at video conferencing.
Yeah.
But now companies want people to come back to work, ostensibly because the bandwidth of communication is so much higher. And I just wanted to ask you, like, do you have opinions on this? Do you believe in, you know, higher bandwidth in-person communication versus low bandwidth telephone calls?
Yeah, this is something I've thought a lot about. I'm kind of a work at home or working from home maximalist at this point. Like, I think that's basically going to be where everything is headed more and more.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that office spaces, excuse me, that's not to say office spaces in their entirety are going to be going away, but I just think this is what I think, where even if a large portion of your team is in one physical location, there are still going to be people who are not in that physical location. So you're going to have to support interacting with these people. And in a way, the hybrid can be even more annoying because, you know, you need to cater these conversations to the people, because there's so many people that are online that you need to support there. Not to say that if there's only one person off, dialing in remotely, you wouldn't want to support them, but
I found that to be really tough, those meetings that are hybrid. It's tough being on either side, because when you're on the video call and everyone in the room is just like chatting, it can feel, you know, you can get FOMO, or you can feel like you're just kind of struggling to be involved. But then when you're in the room and you just know that people on the other side are feeling that, it can be kind of rough.
Well, we had our team had an offsite, and some people couldn't join. And the in-person interactions were higher bandwidth. And it's funny because I actually don't think that in-person is that much better about having the same conversations at a higher bandwidth.
Yeah.
I think the behaviors are just completely different, and the things that you talk about are completely different. And like, you're having these other conversations that you just wouldn't normally, and that is spurring creativity or problem solving about different things.
Yeah.
I'm having conversations with people that I never would have because there wouldn't be a reason to.
Right. Sorry, my dog is completely waking out right now. Let's just, can we just wait a few seconds?
Sure.
She'll probably stop. Can you hear that?
A little bit. It's doing a pretty good job of.
Okay, she stopped. You want to clap again?
All right. 3, 2, 1. So, so that's basically what I think. Or I think I think that fact that these hybrid meetings are like, I think the fact that those hybrid meetings are like kind of this minimum local minima, and the fact that we've already like let the cat out of the bag of remote work it's actually going to be a pressure on moving to a more and more remote world.
Yeah.
Is everything all right?
Sorry, she's still going.
Yeah, I wanted to try to like tie that up in a bow, and then.
Yeah, no, I think what you just said was perfect. Maybe when she stops, I'll just say "yep," and then we can go to the next chapter.
Yeah, and if you want, you can lead us into the next chapter.
Okay. Oh, the next chapter was the design docs one, right?
Yeah.
Oh my god, she usually doesn't go this long. Okay, ready?
3, 2, 1.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I really do think companies are gonna have to get better at remote, or they're just gonna fail. All right, so let's move to the next chapter. I just wanted to make sure we chatted about that for a second. This next chapter was the one that really stressed me out. It's all about design docs.
Yeah, I want to understand where your stress is coming from, because I feel like he was spitting truths, but I didn't know that I felt very like stressed about it.
I think I just felt stressed because I work at Google, and so much of what I do is either writing or reading design docs, and just having to think about that while reading this chapter was tough. He's also just mentioning a lot of, and this is good, but he mentions a lot of common mistakes that people make in their design docs. Like, for instance, there's a point where he talks about having a game design, just some godly game design document that describes the entire game perfectly, and everyone can just like build their stuff based off of that doc. And that's like a huge mistake that people make. Like, it's a complete fallacy that can even exist. And it's good that he's describing that for people who are just beginning their career or whatever. But for me, when I read that, I just remember all these times where I like tried to produce something like that, and how much of a fool's errand it was.
Yeah, I think it's really important to understand the target audience and what you want it to be used for.
Right.
And so just recently I've been so we're doing this big migration to the legacy representation of our save files or whatever to this new representation. And so there's 1,000,000,001 ways that someone can get from one way to the other. And so we just need to really spend time thinking about what is the user experience going to be in these different situations.
Right.
And it's like, at least right now, I'm trying to think. I'm working on this high level, like this is what. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Let me see. Okay. So yeah. Right now I'm putting together this design doc where it's not really a design doc. It's almost kind of like a user experience doc.
Yeah.
And like my goal is this needs to be a very lightweight doc, so that and the point of it is to be the source of truth for like what the experience, like what the phases of this are. And what I'm trying to be very intentional about is like this. We should not be leaking a lot of technical information into this doc, because that's going to really increase the inertia of like getting this back into like some reasonable semblance, that people, and not to mention it's just not what the target audience is supposed to, or like that they need to know.
Yeah. Now, this is such an important aspect of documents, is just knowing the level of abstraction that you should be discussing something, especially when you're talking about mega projects where a lot of times you when you're starting a mega project, obviously you're dealing with a very high level of abstraction. You're saying, oh, these are the moving parts that we're going to put into place, and you need to slowly, depending on how large your organization is, but when you approach something like that, you often need to just be very slow at like revealing new details and getting lower and lower level. And something that can be really hard is staying at that high level for as long as is necessary to like properly communicate these ideas. And that's something I've noticed, that just a mistake that engineers can make, and I've made in the past, is having some document that just discusses a topic at the wrong level of abstraction, usually too technical.
One thing that's interesting to me is the relationship between, because these two docs are, or so let's say I have my high level overview and then the like technical detailed doc of how the migration is going to go.
Yeah.
Right? They're constantly interreacting with one another, where we have some product decision in the one doc, and then that now needs to affect how, like, the details of the migration, and then we do a little bit of research in order to write the migration technical doc, and then that actually is like, oh wait, we're not going to be able, like, there's something that we learned that means that we're going to have to affect the way, or we can't do the approach that's described in the. So I'm curious, like, how do you think about their coevolution? Because you can't just like it sounds like what you described is like you stay at a high level until that's been agreed, but like, what do you do when the fine grained detail kind of like feeds back?
That's an amazing question. I am a huge fan of docs driving a decision, and then you move on from the doc.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a huge downside to that, where docs do get out of date. But I believe that docs just are going to get out of date. And so, you have a document. It's a very good forum for communication, especially if, on Google Docs, for instance, where you can like write comments all over the place and respond to them and assign people tasks and stuff. It's this amazing forum for asynchronously building up a set of ideas. But you do that, you build it up, you use it to drive a decision, and then once that decision is made, the doc immediately becomes not completely obsolete, but it becomes out of date. And I will occasionally go back and update docs, but not that often. I just don't see a ton of value in it, because if like, let's see, how do I want to put this? Like, let's say someone needs to learn about something you built and you have this doc for it. Unless you are perfect about going back and like updating that doc about every single little decision you made on the ground while you were building this thing, you're not going to be able to send them to that doc anyway in good conscience. So yeah, I guess this all is just part of my belief that docs are, they serve the purpose of helping make a decision, but beyond that, they have less value.
Have you heard of the grand unified theory of documentation?
No.
This is it was a very interesting attempt to kind of like break down the space of documents into these discrete territories, essentially. And let me, like, I'll try to break it down simply, but it definitely, it landed with me. Like, when I heard about it, I was like, oh wow, okay, this is another important thing to understand when you're writing a document, is like, how am I expecting this to be used, right? So there's two axes here. There's serve our study, it says, which I don't love these terms, but serve our work.
Okay.
And then there's practical steps, and then there's theoretical knowledge. And those are the two. So those are the two axes. Like, okay, what are they in service of? Is this just like kind of abstract knowledge, or is this specifically for doing my work? Or you know, and that's one axis, and then the other one is, is this broken down into like a series of practical steps, or is this just like vague, not vague, but like it's kind of more abstract knowledge?
And when you say it's abstract knowledge, is it referring to something that's like already established, like basically tech writing about like an existing product?
It's interesting because like I'm basically thinking of it as essentially in contrast to a tutorial, which is do this thing, do this thing, do this thing, do this thing, right?
Yeah.
It's like maybe it's like an encyclopedia of ingredients versus a cookbook, right? So it's like the encyclopedia of ingredients is in theoretical knowledge because it's just this reference material. You're not going to look up the ingredient of chicken in the encyclopedia when you want to make a chicken recipe. But it's like if you're trying to expand your knowledge about chicken in general, that's might be when you're looking at that kind of reference text.
Right. Yeah. Which, I mean, it does speak to, you know, something that I do believe, which is there's different roles for documentation. Some documentation is super important and needs to be long-term and needs to be kept up to date. Like, for instance, API docs. You know, I'm a firm believer in APIs are one of the more valuable things that are produced at an engineering company. And so those APIs, the surface of those APIs need very good documentation.
Yeah.
But do I want code to be documented? Not really. I think we can stop at the API boundary.
Interesting. One thing. So you're saying, like, do you want code to be documented? You're saying, like, do you want documentation, like, in the middle of the implementation of a function or something like that? And you're like, nah, you don't really want that.
Well, yeah, I mean, usually I don't want that. But I'm even talking about how some APIs implemented. You know, like, obviously there can be important details. You know, like this API, I don't know, like whether it's... Well, I guess this would all be documented in the API itself, but I do not need to know how an API is implemented. In fact, I think that's, if I wind up needing to know that, that's like a flaw with the API. That's a failure
of abstraction, yeah.
Exactly. So just document the abstraction itself, document, you know, the failure conditions, but the other thing is the failure conditions should be obvious just from reading the API. So... Yeah, I'm a huge believer in self-documenting code. I think there are times where you need to document code and need to document implementations, but I think that usually that's a mistake. You know, if you're needing to do that, you've made a mistake.
Yeah. One of the things that is interesting about this kind of taxonomy of documentation is that, like, design docs don't really fit into any one of those categories very well. And it's like, I guess I wonder, and this goes exactly back to what you're talking about. It's like, what is the point of a design doc? It's basically, to your point, it's a point in time discussion about, like, the you know, the context of that you were solving the problem in, the options that you considered, and then but maybe I'll turn it around to you. Like, how is a design doc expected to be used? I mean, there are multiple purposes of a design doc, and I don't want to, like, overgeneralize, but I think the primary purpose is decision making. You have something that you want to do as an engineer. You need to have some artifact which quickly describes your option, quickly describes the other alternatives you
looked into, describes the risk characteristics, maybe even some ballpark estimate of how long you think it's going to take, but it's purely based on some decision that you either want to make or implement yourself, or you want the organization to make. So that to me is the main purpose of a design doc.
So then eventually, like, people, these design docs, they float around forever. You have this Go link, and like it's linked to a bunch of different places. It's like, oh, if you want to understand how this thing works, like, go read this design doc.
Yeah.
Is that a misuse of it?
No, I mean, yeah, I think I'm at risk of like being way overgeneral and making it sound like I believe something that I don't like fully believe in, because there's obviously value in having a document that gives an overview of something. And a lot of times at the outset of a project, you're going to write all these designs that do describe at a high level what the project does. And those designs are probably valuable in the long term as just a one-stop shop where someone can like learn the overarching details of something. But I do think that, generally speaking, designs are for making a decision. And if that decision gets made, they quickly go out of date and they quickly lose a lot of their value. And there's not a ton of value in keeping them around. Like, I'm just thinking back on most of the designs that I've ever written, and the code that the design was for still exists and still services traffic and handles requests and stuff. But is the design still valuable? Probably not at all. The design is probably, just describing little details that may not even be true anymore. Someone may have come in and added a bunch of enhancements or something. So it's just, I think it goes back to that whole, it's just a point in time and it's out of date.
Yeah. And it makes me wonder if maybe it's like there's two different things. It's like, and maybe even calling it a design doc is confusing because it's not really documentation. This is like a decision-making tool, like
right.
You're saying.
Yeah.
And it's and I also do think it's not, it's for making a decision, but it's also about encouraging like problem solving, right? It's like, okay, here's what I have thought of so far, but maybe if someone comes in from the side and is like, oh, have you considered this? Like,
exactly,
that's going to completely change everything. So
that's
and I think yeah, go for it.
Yeah, sorry, that is exactly how I see it. Like when I put out a design doc and say, hey guys, look at this, I am soliciting more ideas and soliciting like feedback and, hey, call out the crazy parts of my idea. Like, where am I going wrong here? Yeah. So that is the purpose to me.
Yeah. All right. I think we could probably go on for a whole nother hour about design docs, but
yeah, I'm realizing that design docs, I feel very like nuanced about them. I have these like strong opinions that I can't fully describe because I feel like there's nuance here and there that, is just tough to fully, put into words. Because I do see a lot of value in them, but I also hate the way that a lot of them are made and, carried out. So it's interesting.
There was this blog post essentially floating around kind of internal to Google where they basically did that clickbaity thing where it's like all of your design docs are bad, right? And something like that. And it's like, I hate that shit. But like, I'm trying to remember what, and it's funny, like I don't even remember any of the points that he made. And like, but I did, like, I got this sense that he felt like design docs, he's like, should be kept up to date. And I don't know. I just don't think that's true. Like, I think that's just a big tax. It's like, and that's not, again, like, it's not what it's for. And it's like, okay, like if things change and like if things change significantly enough, like you might just need to write another design doc. It's like, okay, like we went but I don't think the right thing is necessarily to keep on updating that historic, like maybe you want like a version. It's like, okay, well this was like V1 and then it's like, oh, everything has changed. And so now, yeah, like we'll keep that as a point in time about like why we decided to do that at that point. But like maybe now we need to like take a step back and rethink about it.
Yeah. No, I think those are all valid points. All right. Well, that was a rousing conversation about design docs, but I think we pretty much covered it. These were really interesting chapters. I agreed with a lot of the things he was saying about documentation and teams.
Yeah. I felt like this one felt very applicable. These chapters felt very applicable to software engineering. Like essentially, I feel like you could have transposed these out of this book into just a PR book about, maybe aside from like the art Bible, which that sounds awesome. Like that was one of the design types of docs that he was talking about. But like pretty much aside from that, like just copy paste into a book about software engineering, and I think it wouldn't be out of place. So
totally. And it was
Oh yeah, well, go for it.
I was just going to add to that. I mean, he mentioned some mistakes that you can make. That it's really good to read these chapters to learn about those things, because those are mistakes that I've made countless times and only learned through experience. And it would have been better to just read these chapters and not make those mistakes.
Yeah, it's so funny because you don't really learn it until you feel the sting.
Yeah, that's true.
Of doing it wrong. So, all right, but that's good. So then I think the next time we'll probably there was a chapter in here around technology. So I think it would be good. Like, I feel like we would be remiss if we did not read the chapter on technology. So
yes.
I think that's our next plan.
Cool. All right.
All right. I'll see you then.
See you then.